Hi, I'm Ellen Bader, and I'd like to talk to you about one of my favorite topics, the topic of lies, deception, and confrontation in couples therapy. To simplify, let's just say that couples therapy is mainly a therapy of confrontation, and that your art is to know what to confront, when to confront it, and how to confront it. And it is designed, in fact, for confrontations to point out the developmental edge, the edge where the work needs to take place. A confrontation might be designed to hold up that mirror and show partners what it is they do when they're at their worst, without, in fact, letting them wiggle away from it. Or a confrontation might be designed to help partners look at what they do that's getting in their own way, and then you don't let them wiggle away or escape from your confrontation. One day I asked myself, what is confrontation? And I went to one of my favorite sources, which is actually Webster's Dictionary, and I looked up the meaning of confrontation. And boy, was I surprised, because one of the meanings of confrontation is that it is a technique used in therapy to point out a person's shortcomings, but also to help them realize the consequences of what it is they're doing. And so when you're confronting people in your work, you're going to be really helping them take a look at what they do that's getting in their own way, and also how they may know what the thing to do is, but then they quit at the slightest provocation from the partner and don't put in the necessary effort to make the relationship be, in fact, what it is they would like for it to be. So I thought about confrontation as there being really mainly 6 types. The first type being a soft confrontation, or then maybe an empathic confrontation, or perhaps a gentle but tough confrontation. And then I thought about, well, there's also the indirect confrontation, and of course there's the hard, tough confrontations, and even the great big bombshell confrontations. So let's talk about each of the types in more detail. So the soft confrontation. The soft confrontation is really the mild mention of something. It may not be even perceived as a confrontation by your client. You might say to somebody, for example, have you noticed that often when you're fighting, you've been drinking? And with a soft confrontation, you just drop it into the conversation and then you move away in order not to arouse defensiveness. Sometimes I like to use education as a soft confrontation. You might educate the couple about the developmental stages of marriage and help them look at the fact that if they haven't learned how to resolve conflicts at all or work with their differences at all, their relationship is probably stuck at the very first stage. Or I also like, particularly with business people, to use this, where I'll say that, do you know that in fact, businesses and marriages often fail for the same 3 reasons? They fail because people fail to learn from experience. They fail to adjust to changing circumstances, and they fail to anticipate future problems. Now the next one is the empathic confrontation. And the empathic confrontation is one that you use when you're verbalizing feelings. You're verbalizing feelings that have been unspoken by a client. You might even say your own feelings. You might say, I wonder if I'm the only one in the room who's feeling scared that I might not get it right, or that nothing is going right here. Or you might say to an angry partner, you know, when you're yelling and screaming and fighting, you actually come across to me as quite lonely and looking very hard for love and affection. The next type is the gentle but tough confrontation. And in the gentle but tough confrontation, these are ones you want to be sure that you yourself are in a really good mood and that you can say it with a great big smile on your face, because you want to expose a partner to what it is they're doing that's getting in their own way, but you want to do it in a way that's welcoming, that's descriptive, it's not judgmental, and it really helps that partner start to open up and look at what it is they're doing. The fourth type is the indirect confrontation. And this is the confrontation that perhaps I'm talking to the husband, and the confrontation is really meant for his wife. So I may say something to him about her, but I don't do it directly to her because I don't want to arouse her defensiveness at that time. It's like a bank shot in basketball. The fifth type is the hard, tough confrontation. And when you make a hard, tough confrontation, at this point, you do want to increase the anxiety. You want to up the intensity. And it's designed purposely to make a person feel uncomfortable and to start looking very much more deeply at what it is they're doing. And the last one is the bombshell. And the bombshell is absolutely designed to get their attention, to get them to sit up and take notice. Sometimes it might be when you set a really strong, firm limit. But no matter what, it is absolutely certain that they cannot get away from you and from what you're saying, and that they will have to respond to the impact of the bombshell that you've just dropped into the session. So now that you understand the 6 types of confrontation, let's talk about the cycle of confrontation, and also about the fact that confrontations often build on each other. So a couple comes into your office. The first step is that you're just going to be observing what's going on. You're going to be listening to what they're telling you about the week, and you're thinking, you're just sitting there watching and observing. And then you need to take into account lots of things that you know. You may take into account gender, you may take into account culture, you may take into account individual dynamics from each person's personal history. And as you take all these different things into account, you want to take time to synthesize, take time to think about, take time to analyze. Then you get ready to make the confrontation. And you make a decision. You make a decision about the level of the confrontation. Is it going to be soft? Is it going to be hard? Is it going to be a bombshell? What type of confrontation are you going to make? Usually the first confrontation in a session would be along the lines of something more soft or more gentle. And then after you make the confrontation, you want to be able to take in, to sit back, to watch the impact of the confrontation. And in fact, to be able to say, if it's not having an impact, be able to say, let's back up. You'll act, you'll test, you'll group, you'll regroup. And then the cycle begins all over again. And when the cycle begins again, you're taking those same things into account, and you're watching the impact, and perhaps over time increasing the level of intensity more and more. Now, when you're learning to be a good confronter, you may be thinking about a lot of this more consciously. Over time, this whole process becomes much more unconscious, much more fluid, and you're able to do it throughout the session. I had a lovely experience recently with a client of mine when she was terminating her couples therapy. And she said, when I came to see you, I was like a tree with a really rough, hard outer bark. She said to me, you removed that bark, and I never ever knew you used a knife. To me, that was a supreme compliment about the power of confrontation. So I ask you to think about your own clients. Think before you go into your next session. Think about what kind of confrontation you might want to use and the level of intensity that you might want to go to in a particular session. At the Couples Institute, we are committed to helping you be the very best couples therapist that you can be. And with that in mind, thank you for sharing your time with me today. We want you to know that you are not alone.